Welcome everyone to the channel. My name is Chazit and today we're discussing the Protection Paladin pre-raid best in slot gear to get you ready for the first raids in the Burning Crusade Classic. Now to start off we need to understand how to gear a Protection Paladin. I'm not going to go super in depth, so if you know this already then feel free to skip over, but if you're not sure then it's definitely worth a listen. Now, as a Protection Paladin, the goal is obviously not to die. We have a mechanic from bosses in the Burning Crusade called Crushing Blows, which, put simply, are attacks that deal 150% of the normal damage they would. If you're getting hit by heavy mechanics, which you often will in raids, then you need to make sure you don't get hit by the Crushing Blows. Luckily, we have a way to avoid this by having enough combined defense, dodge, parry, and block rating, something we call avoidance. There is even a simple macro which you can use to show what your combined avoidance rating is. You need 102.4% combined avoidance as well as 490 defense rating to ensure a crushing blow isn't possible. Now, unsurprisingly, this means that the itemization you'll be targeting as a paladin will largely be defense stat orientated, but there is another stat that you'll aim for with equal veracity, and that is spell damage. A majority of your spells as a prot paladin scale with spell damage, and the most important of all, consecration is going to make up a large amount of threat that you can produce. Fortunately, no other classes aside from paladins want spell power plate gear, so you'll only be rolling against your fellow pink crusaders. You will, however, compete for spell damage weapons with caster classes. So moving on to the gear, and with this list I've taken out any BOEs and any gear that is related to a profession. I wanted to make this list as profession agnostic as possible, so you have free choice to pick whichever one you prefer. The only slot that isn't the case is in the trinkets, where there are clear advantages to having either jewel crafting or engineering. I'll go through those in a bit more detail when we get to it. A majority of this gear is from heroic dungeons, with a small selection tied to reputations. I'm going to cover which reputations to farm first and the best rewards tied to them in a subsequent video, so please make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss it, and the other great content coming to this channel. Hey guys, so jumping straight into things, and I've plotted out all of the pre-raid best in slot gear here on 70upgrades.com, which is a fantastic website and resource. You can use it to plot out what gear you're planning, what gear you're aiming for, and I really do recommend everyone checks it out if you're not using it already. So first and foremost, as you can see, using this gear set, we've hit our defense cap of 490, or the goal we're aiming for, and in terms of our total avoidance, if you look down and see the boss avoidance Holy Shield, that's basically how much avoidance you've got with Holy Shield up. That's 102.47%, and if you remember back from earlier, we only need 102.4%, so we're just above, which is optimal. We're aiming for the exact amount we need without having to go too over the top. And also we're aiming to sort of maximize our spell damage possible. So we've managed to got 378 spell damage out of this gear set, which is quite a considerable amount. Obviously, spell damage is extremely useful for threat generation, which is something that prot paladins already suffer with at the start of the expansion. So that is a big bonus. And of course, any pre-raid gear is going to be it's a bit of a trade-off. You need to get your defense rating up, you need to get your avoidance there. Be able to carry enough threat, but also have enough survivability. So it's a trade-off essentially, and none of these are going to be optimal for what you're looking for. A few weeks into the raid, you're going to be looking for much better gear. So, but hopefully this is a good guide to get you guys started off. And there's lots of resources out there and lots of, I think, conflicting opinions of what is best. And if you just plugged in, the sort of basics into this website as well, it would come out with a completely different gear set. But I've gone through all of that, and I believe this to be the most optimal gear set you can get, and I'll explain why while we go through it. So starting off with the helm, and we're using the helm of the righteous. As you can see, we're also using the spolders of the righteous, which gets us that 2 set of the righteous armor, which is consecration ability deals costs 15% less mana. So consecration is one of our biggest threat generating abilities, not just on AoE fights, but also single target fights, and something we really struggle with, as I said, at the start of the expansion. So being able to use it more often because we're using less mana is really important. We're going with the Glyph of the Defender on this, and the Greater Inscription of Warding, which is the Aldor inscription for the shoulders, and of course we're going for defense rating gems in the helm, and looking at the meta gem, we're going for the powerful Earthstorm Diamond, which gives us 18 stamina, which is quite a lot, and the stun resist, which is also very useful. On the shoulders, we've got obviously Greater Inscription of Warding, as I said. We're going for the Regal Night Side, gives us dodge and stamina, and we're going for the Solid Star Balloon, just straight up 12 stamina. And yeah, that's sort of it for those two. The neck piece is Necklace of the Juggernaut. Now this gives us quite a lot of defense rating as well as some agility, which obviously gives us a little bit of dodge, but the stamina is the real standout for this one. 33 stamina is quite considerable. Of course, this does cost badges of justice, so you're going to have to farm this a little bit, and if you want to prioritize other pieces, that's fine. You can also go for the Steam Hinged Chain of Valor, which also has very good stats, and it's slightly less stamina, but more block rating. But as I said, if you're over the avoidance cap, it's probably not great to go too far over that. You want to have a real balancing act there. So I think getting the extra health using this neck is really useful. Obviously, survivability is something you do need to think about as well, as bosses do hit really hard right at the start of the expansion. So moving on to the cloak, and we've got the Iron Scale War Cloak. There are other options here that are fairly similar. You've got the Devil Shark Cloak, which is, from the Steam Vault, which is slightly worse off, I would say. The Iron Scale Cloak, you have more stamina, you have block rating and block value of your shield, and obviously block being one of the most important stats for Paladin. This one is really nice, and this is from the Slave Pen's Heroic, so one of the ones you're going to be wanting to farm the most. And with that, we have the 12 dodge rating cloak enchant. So you've got adding more dodge into there. All of these enchants you need to have to be able to hit the defense caps. So I would recommend going with these as much as you can. So moving on to the chest, Jade Skull Breastplate. This is another really nice item. Drops the Mechanar, so you're going to have to do some achievements to get into it. There are other options. They're a little bit worse off. The one from the Architrave, again, you're going to need to get into those dungeons. Going all the way down to something that isn't, it's going to be easy to get. It's a Steam Vault, but the Breastplate of the Righteous, you don't really want this one because you're not getting anything from it. You're not getting the 4 set. You're not increasing the 2 set anymore, so it's kind of lost stats really. And with the Jade Skull Breastplate, you have 50 stamina, which is huge, 25 defense and 23 block, so really, really good itemization on that piece. And we're going with a 6 all stats. There is an alternative for this. You can go with the Exceptional Health, which gives you 150 health. This ends up giving you slightly higher health, but obviously you're losing sort of the other main stats, so it's a bit of a trade-off. I don't think it makes a huge difference either way, really. It's going to be fairly negligible, but I suppose that comes down to personal preference. So moving on to braces, braces of dignity are the ones I've chosen. There are other options here from blacksmithing, the braces of the Green Fortress. These are probably going to be quite expensive at the start of the expansion, but I suppose people are going to be looking to get these as soon as possible. But I suppose for the sake of simplicity, I wanted to make this just dungeon gear essentially, or easier to obtain to dungeons and reputations. But Braces of Dignity, I really like these anyway. You get the damage and healing done by magic spells, which you don't have on the Braces of the Green Fortress, and that makes them really powerful. Obviously, it has defense rating as well. These are literally perfect for prot paladins. They are built for them, essentially. So really good bit of gear there, and I've twinned that up with the 15 spell damage Bracer enchant. As I said, trying to maximize the spell damage as much as we can, just to give us as much threat generation as possible. In terms of weapon, I would say sword, but in terms of weapon, there's plenty of options. Now, on the face of it, you might be thinking, why am I not using the Gavel of Unearthed Secrets? And the reason for that is the speed is really slow. It's 2.7 speed, as opposed to Stormcaller, which is 1.8. And the reason the speed's important is because you do damage every time you hit, and the damage comes from your seals. And so more often you hit, the more damage you're going to do, therefore the more threat. So in terms of, if you're playing a warrior or something, then, you're going to want to be using slower weapons if you're, DPS. And this is great for healers, but in terms of what we're looking for prot paladins, really not ideal. So we've gone with Stormcaller. Now this is Horde only. If you're Alliance, you can go for the Continuum Blade, which is also extremely good. It's somewhat similar. You get more stamina, but you get the sort of spell hits somewhat useless. You get a bit of spell crit strike on Stormcaller, which again isn't perfect itemization, but it works out, I think, slightly better to go down that route. In terms of other options, there aren't really many better options. You really want to get the spell damage on your weapon. Sun Eater, you're just not going to get that. That's more of a warrior weapon. And Mana Wrath you do, but it's far less magic damage, essentially. You're losing 30 odd magic damage, so Stormcaller there is definitely going to be your best choice. And in terms of enchant, we've gone with Major Spell Power, so that gives 40 spell damage, which is quite considerable. Moving on to shield, Azure Shield of Koldara. So this is a Badge of Justice gear. It's actually for 33 badges is relatively good value, I think. The other ones you can get are the Fell Barrier, which, as you can see, you don't really get any defense stats on, which isn't ideal. And the Crest of the Shatar, you need Shatar Exalted, which is a bit of a pain in the ass to farm out straight away. So that's something you may be able to get down later down the line. But in terms of sort of initial gear that's easier to get, the Azure Shield of Koldara is not only better rating, like in stats wise, but actually far easier to get. You're getting far more stamina than the Crest of the Shatar as well. 31 stamina is really, really good for the health, and obviously defense and block rating is sort of what you'd expect, but getting those on there is extremely nice as well. And you're going with the 15 block enchant on that as well. So moving on to the gloves. Gloves of Dissension, Gauntlets of Dissension, sorry, I should add. Again, we have other options here if you're going for BOE, but they're really not that much better. You gain a little bit of, well, you gain the 2 sockets, but you're losing the primary stats. You get the strength and agi on these ones, and 20 to 4 defense is really nice. You gain resilience rating from the Gauntlets of the Iron Tower, but that's less useful than sort of just straight up defense. So these would be my choice. And of course, you're spending less money. They're easy to farm. They're in the Britannica Heroic, which, as I said, you're going to have to do some sort of prerequisite quest to get in there, but shouldn't be too difficult. In terms of enchant on this one, it's kind of a tricky one. You can go for +2 threat, which I believe is a really good option. It's less of a common choice, but I think having that initial threat early on, which, as I said earlier, is something that Paladins do struggle with, I think does just add a lot to the gear set. Other options are the major spell power. I see a lot of this one. So the increasing damage by 20. That's another nice sort of addition to. And it'll be interesting to see how these do work out actually. In the game itself, to see sort of which will be better. I think they're going to be pretty similar in terms of level. So I suppose go with whichever one is cheaper and whichever one you prefer. The Girdle or Valorous Deeds is our belt slot. This one is. It's easier to get anyway. Black Morass Heroic, there's no sort of far less prerequisite stuff to get into it, and these stats are absolutely incredible. All of the other options, as you can see, are just straight up defense rating. And with this piece of gear, not only have you got the intellect, you've got the defense rating, the block rating, and you've got that damage done by spells by 20. So really, really great bit of gear. Your quintessential prot paladin piece. Time Warden's Leggings are the choice I've gone for the leg slot. They're from Keepers of Time Revered, which is again one of the reputations you're going to want to farm up pretty much straight away. You get 3 slots, which is lovely. Of course, you get 3 slots as well with the Fellsteel Leggings, but you do have to pay for those. Get dodge and you get defense on it, and you get a hell of a lot of stamina. 57 stamina is extremely nice, as opposed to the Fellsteel Leggings, which are just 39. And you get slightly higher armor on the Fellsteel Leggings, but that stamina really is nice. Extra 17 stamina is really useful, or 18 stamina, sorry. So yeah, that would be my choice for those. In terms of gems, so I've gone for the red socket. I've gone for the Regal Knight size, so 4 dodge and 6 stamina. For the yellow socket, we've got the Enduring Talosite, so that's 4 defense rating and 6 stamina. And for the blue, we've just gone with a straight up stamina gem. In terms of the sort of armor kit or whatever you use on this one, there's 2 choices. You can go for the Nether Cleft leg armor, which is going to be probably your choice you're going to want to go with later on in the expansion, because you get a hell of a lot of stamina for it. That's when threat is less of an issue. But early on, I think that the Runic Spell Thread offers you a bit more of an all-rounded approach. You get the spell damage and healing by 35, which is pretty big. 35 extra spell damage is massive, and you're still getting 20 stamina, so you're not losing a hell of a lot. So I think in terms of sort of what you get from it, Runic Spell Thread offers better value early on. So that's sort of all of that. Now, moving on to the boots. The boots of the Righteous Path. These drop from Kargath War Chief Kargath Bladefist in these Shattered Halls. These are going to be a bit of a pain to farm, because it's not a horrendously difficult dungeon, but it's quite a long one, and Kargath's right at the end of it, so that's going to be one you're going to have to sort of farm out a little bit, I suppose. Other options are the Eagle War Boots, but you get strength and agi on these, which is nice. The defense rating is great, but the Boots of the Righteous Path are intellect, and you get the damage on it, the magic damage. So really, really good itemization. Again, quintessential prot pally gear. So that would be what I would recommend to go for. And I've gone for the ball speed on this. You can go just straight up fortitude, which gives you an extra 3 or so stamina, I believe. But I think having the extra speed on the ball speed boots, on the ball speed enchant, is really useful. I think it just gives us a bit more of an all-rounded approach. I think speed's one of those things that paladins have suffered through, not just in TBC or Classic, but actually the whole way through WoW. So having that extra speed, especially when you're running through dungeons, is essential. Prot paladins are one of the slower tanks at the start. I think it's not a case of you can just run in and smash your face into mobs. You have to really understand it. So having that extra bit of speed just really does help speed things up a little bit, and your raid group or your group will be very happy with that. Moving on to the rings, and we can get some really, really solid itemization here. And Dormu's tier is from Caverns of Time normal. This is this is a really nice one. You've got the defense, block, and dodge on it. So really, really powerful stats on this one. There are other options as well. So the other ring we've gone for firstly is the Elementium Band of the Sentry. Drops from the Arcatraz, and again gives you quite a lot of defense, decent dodge rating, and 24 stam, which is really nice. The Ring of the Unyielding Force is another option. You get a lot of stamina and armor from this one, but you get less defense, or you get 22 defense, but you're losing all the other stats as well. So I probably wouldn't recommend going for this. And for 25 badges of justice, I think there's better uses for that. So I probably wouldn't recommend going for this one yet. You can do later on if you choose, but in terms of sort of starting out, these two are going to do you fine. And we go on for plus 12 spell damage on both of these, so no messing around on that front. So moving on to the trinket slots, and I've chosen the Figurine of the Colossus. This is an extremely good bit of gear. As you can see, every successive block heals you for 120, and that lasts for 20 seconds. So if you're farming, if you're going through a dungeon and you've got a lot of mobs on you, this can keep you alive single-handedly. Our block chance from this armor set is 25%, so you're potentially going to be healing a lot every second if you get this on. This is also an amazing piece of gear for AoE farming, so this is one thing you're going to want to pick up early on regardless. And in terms of options for the second slot, I've gone with a Goblin rocket launcher. This is one of the two engineering trinkets you can go for. They both have 45 stamina on them, so it's pretty much just the on-use effect that you can choose. The Goblin rocket launcher you basically fire a rocket at the enemy, which does quite a lot of damage and stuns them for 3 seconds. So it's a really good way of pulling, it's almost an extra Avenger's shield if you like. Whereas the Poultry Riser just turns them into a chicken. So it's a bit of a weird one. It's more of an AoE, more of a crowd control ability, but I prefer the rocket launcher. I just think it works better for what we would want it for. You can also go dual crafting. The Dawnstone Crab is good. You get extra dodge and defense from it. I don't think it's as good as the other options personally, so hence why I've left it out. But also Adamantine Figurine is another one. A hell of a lot of armor. This is really nice for warriors, I would say. But yeah, these are my two choices: Figurine of the Colossus, Goblin rocket launcher. I feel like you get a good balance between health and extra stats, and the use on the Figurine of the Colossus is just amazing. So those are my choices. And Libra. So this is a weird one. Obviously, this is something which is for people that haven't played Paladin on the Horde side. This is a new thing. You won't see much of this because it's only been used for Alliance in Classic. But for Libra of Repentance, this is by far the best choice at the start. It's only 15 badges of justice, which is pretty low, and this increases our block rating whilst we're using Holy Shield. So this single piece of armor basically gives us the ability to become uncrushable, because you're only really uncrushable when you're using your Holy Shield, just because it's really hard at the start, if not impossible, to get enough overall avoidance to become uncrushable. So using this is absolutely essential. The Libra of the Eternal Rest is really nice as well. This is something you're going to use for AoE farming, so worth picking up if you see it. Increases the damage of your Consecration spell by up to 47. And it's something you can probably use, whilst farming dungeons as well, just to keep things, running quicker. But in terms of pre-raid BIS, this is going to be your best choice, the Libra of Repentance. So yeah, guys, I hope you found that useful. It's not the prettiest armor set, as you can see. It's not going to be winning any awards, but we have to wait a few more years for Transmog at least. I think that's, 2-3 expansions down the line. But yeah, guys, hopefully you found this useful. If there's any questions you have at all, any comments you want to make, drop them in the comments below. And of course, if you'd like to see more videos like this, then please do hit that subscribe button. And if you like the video, hit the like button. It's always appreciated and helps bring my content to a wider audience. But yeah, that's it for me, guys. I will see you in the next video.